I'm just showing what happens to the sympathetic nervous system. My whole body is trembling, and this is just discussing the kick. Okay, that's after singing 3 songs. Please research the polyvagal theory. I've been meaning to make this video for some time. It's more on the polyvagal theory. Sorry, but I suffered from what looked like anxiety and depression last year, and I found that part of managing it very effectively was to work directly with the body and the sympathetic nervous system. There's a brilliant theory on how this works, and it works. And I've found that for me, singing, humming work really, really well. There's a video on the feed of about how to manage an anxiety attack or a panic attack very effectively and pretty quickly if you catch it in time, using this theory. But one of my practices that I'm really passionate about is conscious dance, which I started about 4 years ago in early recovery from an alcohol addiction, an alcohol coping mechanism. And I was dealing with a lot of anger when I first got sober, and a lot of grief, which was partly why I developed the so-called addiction to alcohol. It was a coping mechanism. So I reached out to a friend who had done Gestalt therapy because she had said it was really, really effective, and I couldn't process the anger. I was at a loss of how to move forward, and it's a really destructive, uncomfortable feeling. And she said, never mind the talk therapy, go to conscious dance, go to movement medicine, it's called. She said her words were something like she had had more faster results and more enlightenment in the year that she had done it than she had in 4 years of traditional talk therapy. So along I went. It was it's a fantastic practice. It's quite a thing to walk into. I found it incredible because I used to go to parties a lot to dance. I love to dance, and people at these events usually do use substances and alcohol to loosen up. Doing this practice in a room full of people, and it's an incredibly non-judgmental space. It's an incredibly safe space. Really helped me get over my inhibitions about my body, about how I moved, about being judged most of all. It started for me with lack of self-judgment and being able to move freely, which took some time. And it's something I've gone back to every time I felt that I needed to process a difficult event in my life. Because somehow through the movement, and one would have to go to experience it, it's very meditative. It's very much about dropping into the body, stilling the mind, focusing on the breath, and you have to stay in movement the entire time. It's a 2-hour generally journey, although they do go on longer, some of the events, which is phenomenal to experience. I've done a 4, 5-hour or 6-hour one that was next level if you're into journeying and meditation and connecting, an incredible experience. So I've gone back to it because it's a very quick way for me, in my experience, to reconnect to the present when there's been either a major trigger or a challenging life situation that brings something back and unbalances me. Incredibly effective to ground and land again, and to process whatever feelings come up, because I tend to avoid feelings at any cost. It's something that we were never taught to sit with in my home. It was a stiff upper lip approach and just get on with it. I think that stands true for a lot of people, for my generation especially. And these are skills that are so necessary for recovery of any sort. Now, I'll go back to this again because I was treated. I went into treatment for the first time last year ever for anxiety and depression, which was so severe when I got in there. My life situation was so challenging. I was so stressed out that initially they thought I might be slightly bipolar. And I said to the psychiatrist, please wait a couple of days, because I knew, thank goodness, from my journey what it was. And a couple of days later, I walked into her office and she looked at me and she kind of went, oh. And I went, yeah, oh. And in that treatment facility, which, having said, it was my first time in, and the first night I got there, I was terrified. I was having flashes of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, standing in line under fluorescent lights with my little cup for whatever meds they were going to give me. And I was standing there thinking, how did it come to this? And really, really frightened. But in that facility, I was given information and tools, mostly information and validation, that really I wish I had gone in earlier. I can only say, if you're struggling with this, it is a very worthwhile thing to do for yourself and your recovery, to go somewhere good and tackle this thing head on. I'm now made free. I have been for a year now. No more anxiety and depression. I have worked a very tough program on myself, also gifted experiences and people along the way. Be careful what you wish for, because you always get it. And I was asking questions. It's been a very difficult process, very challenging, but incredible. And I've reached a stage where I'm grateful. And I think it's time for me to start sharing some of it in earnest, because it is curable. It is doable. It's not a life sentence, but it is a long process. I've been working on this particularly for this aspect. What was that? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so we'll just jump straight to the conscious dance. It's about going into the body. It's about getting connected with feelings. It's about watching the mind and the thoughts that, and the dance makes it much easier, because I generally find sometimes that I'm moving in a particular way, and then I'm kind of alerted to something, and I can sort of step back a little bit and watch the movement and go, oh, there's a feeling associated with that. Often survivors of trauma and abuse disassociate. Well, they disassociate. That's the trauma, is the disassociation from the event, because it's too painful and people are too overwhelmed to deal with, essentially. So, with that in mind, mindfulness practices and reconnecting with feelings and allowing them and expressing them and acknowledging them, and then processing them effectively leads, in my experience, to the processing them healthily. And then there's like this release afterwards, and eventually those triggers become less and less and less, and so we heal. That's a slow process. I was saying I've been in this process now for almost 4 years of working on the core stuff. I dealt with the disassociation through alcohol and substances first, because one can only do this sober, obviously, because you need to be cognizant and aware of what's happening, what the triggers are, what the responses are. But in my experience, anxiety and depression is the fight or flight or freeze or fawn response. Not my theories, learned and gleaned from a very talented life coach that I've been following for some time, who's got incredible tools as well to deal with this. So I've taken a lot of that, and then I've kind of amalgamated my own practices into it. But for me personally, the head stuff is far too slow, and my mind is far too tricky and good at misdirecting and deflecting. So I tend to go straight into the body, and it works wonders. So conscious dance is a practice like that. I've instituted it in our house, our home, with my kids. If I can get the teen to engage in it, she's almost a grown up. So I don't feel like I can set many rules for her. But the younger person loves it, and we have a dance hour now, especially during lockdown. We've done it. That is an immense amount of fun for us. It's great for stress. It's great for relieving pressure. It's great for grounding and getting back into the moment. And it's a superb bonding experience as well. We each get to play a track, and then we dance and we sing together. So I've taken the conscious dance now there into the home, especially since we haven't been getting out as much. So there's that. So I did a little recording of my dance tonight to try and maybe talk people through it. I hope you get up, and I hope you do it. It is the first step for me. It was the first step for me in recovery to getting back out there and socializing sober, because it does remove inhibitions and make one really, really much more comfortable about moving and dancing freely in public again. And I think so much of drugs and alcohol is based around social anxiety and awkwardness. That alone, to be able to learn to do this sober, really reduces the need or the desire to use mind-altering substances that basically, in my experience, have disconnected me from the present and the social engagement, which is, I suppose, why I used them. Anyway, so I'll put it up. I'll add some comments about how it works for me during the dance. And there was a class on a Thursday, but you'll be looking for anything related to movement medicine or conscious dance in your area if you want to find out more about this practice. This is not me. This is just something to keep your eyes engaged while I explain a bit more. A dance class, a conscious dance class for movement medicine usually starts with a warm-up, and I generally go early, and I will do some kind of yoga moves, I guess, to loosen up and stretch different parts of my body. I'm not going to do the voice over during the dance because I think it'll be distracting, and it's probably best that you come to your own understanding of how this works. But you will see I carry a lot of tension in my back and neck due to both my work, and that's where I'll hold a lot of my stress and tension. So you'll see me work through different parts of the body, moving my head, loosening up neck, rolling shoulders, hunching and arching back, and swinging my arms quite widely to loosen up. And then I'll move down into my hips, and you'll also see some shaking. This is kind of a tapping with your heels on the floor and shaking your arms out. It's incredibly good for releasing tension as well and dropping into trance, I guess. Yeah, and then it kind of moves down into the feet. I tend to work through every single part of my body during the warm-up just to connect and to feel, what's happening in it. And then I guess towards the end of the clip you're about to see, you start to see more of the freedom, dancing freedom, and conscious dance come in. When people drop into it, the movements sometimes don't even look like dance. It's almost like the mind's expressing itself through the body. It's a very, very interesting way to meditate, because essentially meditation is doing that. It's watching the thoughts and letting them go, and then trying to be single-minded and focus on one point. But the thoughts always creep in, the monkey mind they call it, and it's to then observe and be aware of what they are.
You feel anything in your body?